All right, guys. Season 3, episode 10 of From, the season 3 finale, titled Revelations Chapter 2. Kathleen, I think we are going to have you go first. Ladies first. What do you
What do you
do?
do? Go.
Go.
um, yeah, what a great episode. I'm not gonna lie. I was having some from fatigue, mostly because we did season 1 coverage into season 2 coverage into season 3. So we've been doing this for like I think the total was probably 16, 17 weeks in a row. So I was like, kind of like, let's bring this home. And it really did. It brought it home in such a way that in that last 2 minutes, I'm like, this is the show I want to be watching. And now I'm going to have to wait a year or two or whatever to get this season 3. But man, I texted the group. Second time I cried and shed tears during that Victor Henry moment. So good. And the Sarah stuff just delighted me and tickled me to the oblivion. Like I was so delighted. She knows how to get shit done. Girls get shit done. But yeah, I honestly, we're gonna get into the rest of it. I don't really need to do it other than just to say, great episode. Brian, thoughts?
I'm surprised that the Victor Henry scene caused tears from you. I was just like, about time this happened. Gosh, be a dad to this dude who is clearly losing it. But no, it was a really good finale. I think they totally delivered on a lot of the things that we were craving, such as tangible answers. I think the Fatima reveal was something I didn't 100% predict. So that was satisfying. And Sarah, way to step the hell up. Oh my gosh. Maybe that'll be a divisive thing, but Sarah is trending sky high right now. Maybe MVP of the episode. We'll see. But no, it was a really good finale. And I think that was a great way to put it, Kathleen, was from fatigue. When you put it in the context of 16 weeks in a row, we really have been at this for a while. So I think I am ready to maybe step away from the show, let it breathe for a bit. But I think by the time season 4 just got picked up, and this has to be MGM Plus's most popular show, but it's always nice to see another season get greenlit in these crazy times for streaming shows. So when we come back for season 4, I know I'm going to be ready to binge the crap out of these 3 seasons straight. And yeah, but overall, really good finale. I think it delivered. Luke, what do you do? Go.
This episode was awesome. It was definitely the best of the season. It was a little backloaded with the revelations that show that the episode was named about. I will say, like, the Sarah and Elgin stuff was maybe even my favorite singular moment. So while that wasn't like a revelation, there was still at least a cool moment or two, at least in the beginning of the episode. Yeah, she is top 3 characters now. I think she just, like you're saying, it's going to be divisive. It's Jaden Boyd, Mini Gap, then Sarah. I don't even know who's next. Maybe Kenny or something like that. But she was awesome. I was rooting and just fist pumping. I was so excited to see that. I was even excited to see how far Boyd was willing to go. All of that's going to be fun to talk about. But the reveals themselves, like, clap, 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 Jimmy. You've been nailing a lot of them. I wouldn't say 100%, but good enough to say that Theory Town lives on, baby. Theory Town lives on.
Let's go.
It's amazing how early you grasp some of these concepts that ended up playing out in a very entertaining way, and not just like cookie cutter answers of just reincarnation. They did it in a really fun, like, energy is staying kind of way. And we're going to get into all of that. Of course, that is why we're here. One thing I want to bring up, though, because as you guys know, we have screeners. So we're watching this before the public, and we don't know how these episodes are being received until we get 4 or 5 days after the podcast drops, right? I was looking at IMDb, and I didn't realize that last episode was basically the lowest of the entire series in terms of ratings, which that's surprising to me. It was a 6.3, and then the actual lowest was like a random season 2 episode at 6.2. But like, besides that, there was maybe one more that was even within range of episode 9. So meaning people were getting fed up with this. And I don't think that really speaks to the quality of last episode, more as they owe us this. Like, we want to sit here and say that this was a good episode. It absolutely was, because they finally gave us answers. But I almost don't want to pat them on the back for giving us answers. I'm saying, okay, like, you owed us this so much that the fandom was literally starting to turn on From. I've never seen such a turn. Yeah. Like, and I'm not talking just our community and our Discord, like Reddit. Every time I see a TikTok 100%. Talking about it, people were getting fed up with this. And I think this is going to be enough of an appeasement that everybody's going to be happy. And then you couple that with season 4 getting greenlit before the finale even came out. So good news, like all around, I think. And it's going to be a really fun off season to continue to theorize with what the new information they gave us. But this was a great episode. So Jimmy, your thoughts?
I just want to say that I think you're right, Luke. I think there was a lot of fatigue on the fandom, especially with me doing all these TikToks and seeing a lot of the comments. You were bringing up our Discord, which, of course, everyone's phenomenal. We have some major shouts to give. But besides our community, I was seeing it on Reddit, on TikTok, with people just saying, enough's enough. I'm done. It's been 5 episodes in a row of the season where we're not getting anything. And we said it ourselves with Revelations Part 1 or Chapter 1. Maybe you shouldn't have called it Revelations. Wasn't any major revelations. And people probably went, well, this is ridiculous, right? But I said this off pod. I thought that the first 40 minutes were great. I thought they were good, but they weren't any revelations. And I was wondering, I was like, what is going to happen here? And then boom, 15 minutes of just hot fire, which really got me going. And I want to say, I'm proud of all 4 of us for not getting leaked, because the leaks were all over the place. And I really didn't see anything, especially with these TikToks that I was making. Anytime someone seemed like they were going to do anything that sounded like trying to throw a leak my way, I deleted it for the fandom. I made a video for it. Like you said, Luke, I like some of the theories that I made. Of course, there were so many wrong that you got to know I didn't read the leaks. So I'm proud of that too. We had a great time with all the theories, and I'm excited to rewatch the first 3 seasons when it's time. When it's time, and we know that they're coming back in 2026. We got the official press release from MGM Plus. They sent that to us. They said that, as you were referring to, Brian, From is, of all time for MGM Plus, the most viewed show, which not huge competition, but still phenomenal. And they're really bringing up the fact that Rotten Tomatoes scores for From are high 90s, and IMDb is a little bit different, but this show was a blast for me. I love Theory Town lives on, like you said, Luke. I love theories. I love this kind of show. I'm ready to take a little bit of a break, reflect on it, and then we'll binge 3 seasons, because this is the best binge show. Like, you could say, and we could have this fun conversation at another time, but you could argue the best binge show of all time is your favorite show to watch, because you just want to watch it and watch it and watch it. But this show is made for the binge, and it was tough to do week to week. It really was. So I'm gonna really enjoy rewatching before season 4. Let's just get started, guys. I'm ready to go, because there's a lot to talk about.
And just like you're saying, there's a lot to talk about, but there's not necessarily a lot of like buckets that we usually cover this in. So what I want to do is just pick off the little easy ones here, just so we can focus on the big stuff, and then just, keep this more just about the ending itself. And I want to start it off with just passing it over to Kathleen, and let's just crush real quick everything Victor and Henry, because it seems like that's something that really you empathized with. And there's definitely something I want to talk about. There's a conversation to be had about the Eloise part, but yeah, this heart to heart was amazing. So I'll give you the floor.
I've been tough on Victor a little bit. I've been known to be a little tough on Victor. This just broke my heart. I thought his acting was phenomenal here. His breaking of his voice, thinking his dad's going to be mad at him, and really internalizing this thing that he just found out himself. He was blocking it for all those years, probably for his own, mental health. It was like obviously a PTSD thing. And he just realized this thing, but he was brave enough to know, to be like, I need to tell my dad and show my dad this. And him just being like, you don't have to be my dad anymore. Finally, Henry gripped him up and was like, don't you dare. Like, it was a really good communication, but I wasn't expecting Eloise to have a rock. And him being like, she was so little, there was only pieces. I was like, holy shit. Yeah. It was a really tight bucket, and I thought it packed a really good punch for what it was. And I was just happy to get some tears flowing during that. It was like making my breath hitch, which is all I want in a show. Make me cry. And I'm an easy cry, so this is good.
Hey, Kathleen, cry, man.
What was your Eloise? Yeah, what was your Eloise beef?
Oh, there's no beef, but I just felt like the way Victor described it, almost
She's
if
alive.
it wasn't already confirmed, it's confirmed that she's alive. Yes, that's it.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
otherwise, there'd be no point. She wouldn't have had a purpose in the story except to be a fake out of who Tabby's a reincarnation of. So that's all I wanted to put out there because she's going to be
Great.
in season
Yeah.
4. Yeah.
I thought that this was really, really good. Kathleen, you nailed all the sentimental parts of it, all the parts that gave you those feels. I'm really, really happy that we went this route with Henry because there were a lot of murmurs in the fandom about like, what if Henry's actually a bad guy I'm sorry, and Miranda and Victor and Eloise were running from him, and that's why he wasn't there because they noticed that a lot of people noticed that when you first meet him, he's carrying a 6-pack towards the house, and then he obviously really enjoyed his drink when he started to drink at the bar, and people were like, is it gonna be revealed that he was kind of a POS and they were running from him and Victor's gonna remember that? But I
Mm,
mean, of course that could always be some kind of reveal if you really need to, but I think they kind of pushed that aside, and I really do like that this was what we got from Victor and Henry. And really, of all the things we have to talk about for these big revelations, Victor's not really part of it. So something that I
yeah.
do want to bring up with you guys before we move on is just Victor himself, right? So last episode when we see him, he's creepily staring at the corner, kind of huddled in the dark, right? And he's remembering, I guess, and he's kind of reflecting on what what he's remembering, what he finally realized what he did, I guess, quote unquote, what he did. A lot of people are theorizing like, is Victor a monster and he doesn't realize it? Is Victor a
Hmm.
halfling? Is Victor this? Is Victor that? Right? There's all of these things about the fact that he can't remember stuff and he kind of acts. They were like, when he was in that cellar, he was acting like some of the monsters do when they're like kind of turned off when they're underground. And I don't think he's a halfling because we have enough from Miranda and the story to hopefully know that she's like not bangity banging with a fairy creature, whatever monster, and then having Victor be born because Victor, unless they're going to really like retcon the story, Victor was obviously alive when they entered Fromville. So I don't think he's a halfling.
No, I don't
And
like this at all.
yeah, can you change him? Obviously you can. We know that you can, but there's a lot to be said. There's a lot to learn. We talk about revelations here. We got some revelations, but there's a lot of revelations that we didn't get. And there's 1 or 2 more seasons left, and we'll get them. But something about Victor, there's going to be some big Victor stuff that we're going to have to find out.
So he's like
Now, to
Blade.
put it on the
He's just
board, I
like
don't think I don't think he's a monster. But I'm just
so he's
saying it's
but if
out
he
there.
was, he would have been the Daywalker like Blade.
Like
He's out in the sun, right?
he's a daywalker, baby, just like
Yeah,
Man in
that's
Yellow,
cool.
maybe. Yeah.
That's kind of
I
cool.
don't I don't think Victor needs that. I don't think he needs to be a monster. I think if they make him a monster, it's like you are really just throwing anything at the wall that you possibly
Well,
can. Like,
I think that it would be cool and tragic to have him be a monster and not realize he's a monster. You know what I mean? But at the same time, how many revelations, to use that word for the thousandth time, has Victor had just from remembering things that he forgot? Right? I
Yeah,
don't think we
seems
need anything else to be like, oh shit, by the way, I'm a freaking monster.
right.
you
Yeah.
know?
yeah. Hmm.
Good B Toms. You want to say anything on that?
Ryan looks a little interested though.
I'm good. I was kind of taking that in, and I'm with Kathleen. I would actually hate that. I think the thing that's special about Victor is that he like was born and raised in Fromville. Like that's his thing. And Jimmy, you said this about the boy in white, I guess it is, where okay, he has all the answers. If he just gives all the answers up front, you don't have a show. Victor's kind of the same way with that. And I think that's where the plot device of he can't remember things comes in. If
Yeah.
he just was like, Boyd, I've been here for 40 years. This is every single thing that I know. That takes away 3 seasons of frustrating viewership for the audience because then
Yeah.
which I would have loved, but clearly the showrunners wanted to drag this thing out.
Yo,
But
yo.
they did it in a very satisfying way because I'm going to say this right now. Victor is the best acting performance in the show.
Oh,
That is a tough ask to play out. Clearly, this child who has seen some stuff and is mentally impaired, maybe that's not the right word, but he is damaged because of that. And that is
Yeah.
definitely a satisfying answer as to why he shut these things away, these memories away in his mind and put them under lock and key. So it all kind of makes sense. And going back to what somebody said, yeah, for an episode called Revelations, there was a surprising lack of Victor involvement for all that stuff. But I think there are revelations still to be had involving Victor, maybe with the revelations about Tabby and her connection to Miranda. Victor might still be involved with some of that mumbo jumbo going on.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Let me ask you guys a question here. So one of the big things that Victor remembers is, oh wait, I have a sister named Eloise. Do you think that he buried his mother and the pieces of Eloise and forgot that they were there too and never visited again, and then miraculously remembered when he remembers his
No.
sister? Because I mean, if you go visit your mom, you're going to see the other grave.
Yeah, I don't think it was something that he revisited. Like he seemed a very reserved guy. Like he wasn't like
So he knows
reminiscing
where
on
he
the
buried
past.
them, and then he just
Yeah.
left it.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
think so. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. Let's move on to the dungeon trio, and I'll pass it over to Brian again because you coined that term. There's just like two scenes that we get. We have Randall freaking out, and Marielle helps him, and then Julie talking to Ethan about basically being a time walker or whatever, a story walker.
Walker.
We don't need to jump into all the Julie stuff yet because obviously that's going to be the fun part at the end. But just anything in general there, Randall is worse than I thought he was going to be. But yeah.
I feel for Randall that he's getting the short end of the stick in this whole thing. Those cicadas, Kathleen, you said I had to take out my headphones or turn it down during that. That's like ridiculous. And for Randall to live through it, I thought that it was very consistent with his character to just be the hardo. Like, nah, I'm not taking this. I'm defibrillating my freaking brains before I'm dealing with this any longer. I'm glad Mari was there for that. I think someone was like, ooh, I'm kind of feeling some romance for those two. I don't think it's going in that direction, but I'm glad that Mari is there for Randall and I guess to some extent Christy. I'm glad that he is now under their roof. I think that's just a very good healing for whatever's going on. And what even has Ethan's character become? Is he just the guy that Julie bounces ideas off of and is like, yeah, it's kind of like the Crominocle. And then that's what it is. It's like he was actually cool and interesting, if not a 2-year-old being played by an 8-year-old in season 1, and they completely abandon it. And now I'm actually craving Ethan to being an interesting character, and they're just not giving him anything. So
yeah, I agree.
Those are my
I agree
thoughts.
with all that.
I would say they do have an issue with not being consistent with their characters. Like Kenny was absolutely crushing the beginning of the season, and then he completely fell off. Sarah, we were like, what the heck happened to Sarah? They exiled her, and she was going through all this good from stuff, and then, it came back around. But there's a lot of characters, and I think they're just lacking a consistency there. But 1 second total shift. I love that we've been calling Marielle Mari, even though her name is Marielle, because I feel it's a Yellow Jackets thing. And I just want to say February 14th, because Mari's the character we hate on Yellow Jackets, and we, whatever. And I love that the nickname is Mari, because I would say it's Mary, but I love
Mari
it. It reminds me of Yellow Jackets every time. But I will say, I've seen people be sketched out by Marielle. It feels like I haven't really dug into anything about it, but people seem to think she's being a sketch bag out of, like, we haven't gotten anything of her
She a mole, Kathleen?
losing it. What'd you say?
Is she a mole?
She might be a mole. I was dying, Brian. So for everyone listening, Brian texted the group because he watched it first and he said, huge Clara episode.
Was she even in it? I didn't see her. I don't think.
No.
Oh, Brian, that was
Anyway.
Lonnie. Well,
I think she's a good peripheral character now. Like she was weirder in the beginning to me than she is now. She's just a C-level character, and I think she's a good C-level character.
Yeah, I agree. I think that people were sketched out mostly because she was acting like nothing was wrong, and she kept being straight up normal to the outside, to everyone watching. And great for this episode for her to finally reveal, no, I'm not okay. We'll probably dive more into Marielle next season, because we're going to get into theories about why Julie's a story walker. Does it have something to do with the dungeon trio? Is Julie special, etc.? And Randall let's bring up something really quick. And I just want to debunk something because I don't know when we're going to have another chance to talk about it. Maybe we will a little bit towards the end, but there's a lot of people. You're talking, Brian, you're talking about like we need something for Ethan to do. Fully agree. Like this show started off with you thinking Ethan's like the answer. And a lot of
Mhm.
people were thinking that this season finale was going to be like a massacre occurring similarly to before with Victor when he was a child. And it was going to be Ethan that was one of the only ones left alive, right? And then he was going to be one of the main characters, which of course would really be upsetting because then we lose every other character that exists. So people were just dying for Ethan to matter more. And so many people, when I'm doing my theory TikToks and looking at Reddit, are theorizing two things when it comes to Martin. Is Ethan Martin and is Randall Martin, right? And I made a whole video debunking it just because, listen, if you're Martin and you see Julie and you see Boyd and you see anybody, why would you call yourself Martin, right? That's just like surface level kind of shit. We know
Not
Martin also
to
has
not freak them out. Maybe they're not allowed to
well,
know who
so
he is.
so here, okay, one more time because there is another part of this theory, and the big part of the theory is people think it's Ethan or Randall because he specifically knows who Julie is when Julie shows up, right? But he doesn't know who Boyd is. And Kathleen, to your point, I honestly think he does know who Boyd is because when he meets Boyd, he says, like, are you from the town? You have a kind face or kind eyes or whatever he says, acting like he
Mhm.
doesn't know him. And just like you said, Kathleen, he would do that because if he was like, hey, Boyd, what's up? Boyd would be like, how the frick do you know me, bro? And it'll be like guns
Mhm.
blazing right away. But go ahead, Brian.
I think the biggest hole in that theory is wasn't Martin a Marine and had like
That's what I
Marine
was just gonna
tats?
say. Marine tattoo on the forearm. So there's there's plenty. A lot of people think that Martin's beard is covering Randall's scars. I think people are just trying to figure out ways to make this make sense. I think Randall makes way more sense than Ethan because Randall was actually one of the dungeon trio, but I still don't know that I'm okay with that. I think Martin is just Martin.
Randall escapes, goes into the Marines, and then ends up back in from again.
There's people talking about Ethan. He's young enough where like where's Eloise? Did she actually get through the tree when she chased Miranda? Did she actually make it through? Smiley attacks Miranda and Eloise followed Miranda. Did Eloise run through the tree and actually make it back to the real world? That's where people were trying to say. And now she's Tabitha, which of course is not true. But could Ethan go through the tree and come back time, however much time later and have been going through the Marines and blah, blah, blah? I don't freaking know. But again, it's not worth our time. But it was theories that I wanted to bring up just because we won't really be talking about Randall or Ethan for the rest of this episode and for probably another year and a half or so.
All
Are we
right.
good then? Are we ready to start the main buckets? Because I'll take us through the beginning of the colony house stuff. Because
Mhm.
I would say this is, like I said at the top, like this isn't the revelation part of this whole episode, but it's definitely the fun part. And we're gonna loop everything in together from Elgin just having the suspicion that, or sorry, Ellis having the suspicion that Elgin knew, to them trapping Elgin in the colony house, to torture scene number 1 with just Boyd, then the conversation with Acosta happens into the torture scene number 2. So there's a lot to break down here, and I just want to start the conversation off with because Father Khatri shows up a couple times throughout this episode. I said this to Alki and Dave when I was rewatching it for the second time. I so wish he survived. He would have been such a
I
fun
know.
little flavor to have, like, in the present, to have Boyd have these conversations in real life. But
Mhm.
if you remember, or you didn't listen to our second season podcast, one of my favorite things about Father Khatri and him being a priest is how he was trying to see everything through the eyes of religion, and like this could be a story in the Bible, which is such a cool idea. And Elgin plays into that when he calls the Phantom an angel. So like that was like a really cool play on that, which would be easier to, I guess, coerce him into doing things if he thinks he's really having like a religious experience to help the people in the modern day Bible story like move forward. So I loved all of that. And I just was just pounding the table for Boyd at first and then Sarah to just torture him, because how do you sit there? Like, I feel like Ellis was so in his right to just start beating the hell out of
Oh,
Elgin.
yeah.
Like, he got it
When
off easy.
when he grabbed him by like the collar and shook him, I was like, dude, throw punches, literally multiple, just drill this guy.
Yeah,
That upset me that Ellis didn't get any licks in.
agreed.
Yeah.
And dude, I'm starting off like I'm walking, I'm cutting a finger off, and now we talk. Like you're freaking, we're setting the bar high. Like there's no way you're not telling me where Fatima is within like 5 minutes. And then I'm sorry, Kathleen, but this is getting a boo for me for Acosta because she was heading in the right direction. Did it do it? Nice.
It did
She was
it.
heading in the right direction, but that was just a frustrating moment. Not that I want to linger on that at all, because Sarah comes in and saves the freaking day with one of the moments of the season for me where, dude, holy hell was I hype when you just hear the screaming, you see Elgin's face, she goes, she's in the cellar. That was just chef's kiss for me. I
Iconic.
just loved everything
Eye
about
patch
that.
Elgin.
Yes.
I
He
know.
Guy's
deserves
gonna have an
every
eye
part of
patch,
that.
dude.
I think the only reason they brought Acosta in was to get everyone else out of the room. They needed
Mhm.
someone
Yeah.
to say, "What are you doing?" So Sarah could go handle it. Iconic. Elgin's arrogance in his just blind belief in this angel. It's like the scariest thing I've ever seen in my life. He's like, "I
It's
think
literally
it's an
Midnight Mass.
angel."
Yes, it's the scariest thing ever.
Dude, it is literally Midnight Mass when they think that this is an angel and it is the scariest freaking thing ever.
Mhm.
Yeah, I've been a ride or die Sarah girl. I've been missing her. I'm so happy that she got this moment. I mean, who knows what that means for her moving forward, but her reasoning behind it was awesome. Like she
Yeah.
did that. I mean, she has her
She
own
was a heel.
issues, but she did that for Boyd. It was the
Yeah.
opposite of the Clark, I bear it so you don't have to. Like, I mean, it was Sarah taking that from Boyd for once.
Yeah.
So it was awesome.
It's definitely funny. Like I'm trying to hold myself back too, just because like the first time Elgin meets this angel, she's trying to drown him in the tub.
Yeah, for
I
real.
mean, come on. So I think the point that they're trying to make, and honestly, I felt it, and I was saying it last episode. He's such a pure character. He's so innocent, and I love the line that Sarah said, where she's like, "We're the people that Fromville, the entity, targets because we want to help people, and we're easily manipulated because
Mhm.
we can be told that we're doing the right thing." It's tough because if I'm Elgin, I'm like, Sarah, you kind of got a point when she's sitting there being like, I killed my brother. The first time you met me, I told you that I killed my brother, and it was because things were telling me to do it. And now you're telling us things are telling you. And I guess Elgin's point of like, hey, I'm not trying to kill Fatima. I'm just trying to let her have this freaking monster baby. It's a little bit different, like he's saying, but still, it was a tough watch for Elgin. And guy's gonna be a pirate in season 4 with his eye patch.
Well, where does Elgin go from here? Because Sarah somewhat hadn't, like, nobody is going to want Elgin around anymore.
Right.
Period. Full stop. Does he go in the box? Do they just be like, you live in the woods? You want to help the kimono lady? Have at it, buddy.
Yeah,
I really feel
had no time for Elgin this episode.
agreed.
None.
that is so
Whatsoever.
funny. I feel like I'm the only one, dude. This is like Kathleen with Sarah. I'm like I mean, I agree with you guys, but at the same time, I just have that feeling that they're just gonna be like, Elgin is so pure and passive and innocent that we'll just allow it. Now, I'm not saying people aren't gonna be like, there's Elgin, the freaking guy that sandbagged us, but I still think he's going to be allowed to live with them and he's not going to be sent to the box and all that kind of stuff. I think that Sarah was worse. If they can forgive Sarah, they're going to forgive Elgin.
Well, not only that, but it all comes back to the conversation he had with Father Cautry and whether or not we've gone back and forth in the past of whether or not Father Cautry is a from illusion or if it's his conscience. And I like to think it's his conscience, and that means Boyd knows in his head that it's a double standard what he's doing. He knows Fatima killed somebody, but he's defending her to the death and to the detriment of Elgin and not caring. So I would say it depends on, do they tell anyone about Tilly and how she died? You know what I mean? There's like so many things of, they let Sarah gets her own house pretty much. Like she's living large over there.
She's living the dream. She remade her ornament and looks freaking phenomenal after getting smashed to a million pieces. She's having a good time. And then all of a sudden the voices come back after she fixes the ornament. But
yeah,
I think that Boyd, no matter what, he has to do so wrong for me not to give him a pass because of everything that he's done for them.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, he's had a lot of double standards this entire season, and we've called him out. Kotri, other people have called him out. The fact that Kenny still doesn't know that Fatima killed Tilly, Kenny should be like, I am fully done with you.
Mhm.
I don't see how that's not the biggest break of trust right after Boyd said, hey man, I will tell you everything. I'm so sorry I didn't tell you about your dad. I should have told you about your dad. And then Boyd knows because, like you said, Kathleen, it's his conscience speaking to him, being like, when are you going to freaking tell Kenny? He should have told Kenny. And the fact that Kenny will find this out, are you meaning to tell me that Kenny, again, is going to be like, all right, I'll be the deputy, man. Thanks for lying to me.
Yeah.
I think everyone agrees Elgin, Fatima, Sarah, none of them would have done what they did respectively if they weren't under the influence of Fromville. So that is a very factual statement. None of them at their core are bad people that are murderers. What I think it's time to do, and something I would really like to see in probably the first episode of season 4, Fatima's back in town. It's time for another group meeting just to say, listen, this is all behind us. As you may have noticed, Elgin is down one eye. We can't explain that in any other way other than by telling you everything that we know. And I think it's
by
time
the way,
to patch people up and say, we can either live with them and accept that this crazy place is crazy and it makes crazy people crazy, or we can put them all in the box and become murderers ourselves. Is that the way we want to approach this? Because we all love Fatima. We're all trying to mend the fence with Sarah, and Elgin's new, but I don't think anybody hated him prior to this. So what do we want to do, people? What do you do go? Literally, that's what I would say if I was
and Brian, you're cracking me up because it's like, yeah, Elgin's missing an eye, and I was gonna be like, and Jim's missing a throat. We need to talk about that, by the way.
Did Brian just become the mayor of From with that speech? I'm like,
he did.
I just
Honestly,
voted for Brian for mayor of From.
I accept. Hey, Boyd's still my deputy, but checks and balances.
We aren't. I don't know if we're moving forward yet or not, but there was all these things about how it was going to be important that we find out Acosta's first name, and didn't they say it this episode?
Danny.
So what the hell does that mean? Kenny
calls her Danny. Well, the show didn't say it was important.
She did. No, the actress was in an interview and she was like, they were like, what's your first name? And she was like, well, I'm not going to give that because the From writers told me not to say it because they wanted it to be organically told to the audience.
They also,
I don't know if
the writers also said that it was going to be important that the monsters look the way they do, and we are going to find that out, but which we did not find that out.
Right.
So I don't know. I think there's a lot of stuff in the air, but
Danny Acosta, Danny Phantom, Phantoma.
Chalk zone.
Rudy's got the chalk. Rudy's got the chalk.
Dude, I love Chalk Zone.
I love Chalk Zone, man. I freaking love that TV show when I was little.
Okay. All right. So how we're going to do this, because now there's just two main things to happen left, right? We get all the reveals that are linked with Jade and the Matthews, and then we get all the reveals that happen when Colony House gets the information from Elgin. They go directly to the seller, and then this is just money. Like I think everything that happens here is the reason people came to the show. They wanted some sort of deliverance, and we got it all here. We get the birth. We knew for pretty much a while now, like the birth was something because it didn't show up on the ultrasound. We obviously knew it was going to result in something. It ends up being like an egg for the monster, which I don't think we specifically called it in that way, but it was worth always asking Jimmy, like, are we getting a Voldemort baby? Because I was guessing that the monster was going to grow in between season 3 and 4, but we got to see that baby in real time just go from tiny to Smiley. And then that also adds into why the actor for Smiley has still been relevant, like in the From sphere, and like still been giving interviews. And we've been talking about, and that's probably why it was easy to have him come back to shoot the Miranda killing scene, because he's going to be a bigger part again. And that is amazing because there's so much to break down about what we get here. And I'm so happy that Boyd in first person got to see the birth of the monster. The Phantom delivers the egg to the, what I counted was 12 monsters at the time. And they were all in their human forms that we can assume like that's what they look like originally. And it's important to point that out because, like we know, there were 7 sacrifices and there was only 12 monsters. Does that mean that the other 2 parents cleanly fit into being Jade and Christopher, or Jade and Abby? But there's some questions I have with there, but I don't want to get too deep because there's so much to break down just in that. But that's going to be like a main talking point.
12 with Smiley or 12 without Smiley?
Smiley was the 12th, and then the
Okay.
13, 14, meaning like the other 2 parents of the 7th ritual kid could have been, Tabby and Jade.
And I think it's important to note that recently a lot of people have been talking about the kid from season 1 that says, "Julie, don't you remember me?" when in the pilot episode when she's running towards Colony House, right? He was there. That was the first time I think we've seen him since season 1. I don't remember seeing him, and a lot of people were wondering why he said that to Julie. And my response and a lot of my comments on TikTok are that I just think there's certain things that they did in the pilot to kind of freak people out and that they're not really going to go back to. You could argue that when she story walks, the monsters can recognize that, and maybe she's met him story walking. We'll have to get into time travel stuff later. But I do kind of think it was a pilot thing, like a freak you out kind of thing. And we also know that the monsters will say whatever the hell they need to say. The granny said, "Hey, I'm your grandma," to the little girl. So,
Like, what were you thinking when we saw that egg and then we saw Boyd watch him deliver it to the group of monsters?
I'm ecstatic Smiley's back. I
Me too.
love the guy. As far as I can love any of the monsters. He
I
was
hate
top
how much I
tier
love him.
Fromville monster, right behind the milkman, who I just have beachfront property carved away in my heart for the milkman monster. But no, I'm very happy to have Smiley back. Did you guys take it as right after birth he looked Boyd dead in the eye?
Either that or the camera. He looked me in the eyes, I feel like.
Yeah.
Because if I was Boyd, once I got the gist, I would be Scooby-Doo-esque hightailing it back up there and being like, guys, you will never guess what I just saw. It's Smiley.
Yep.
He's back.
Smiley, baby.
That's how he would have
is
said it
back.
too.
Yeah, that's how Boyd talks.
Well, okay, so I mean, I guess we can. There isn't, I guess, as much to break down as I thought, but it's really what I want to stick on is the numbers, and I guess how this relates to the reveals from the other bucket with the Matthews. Jimmy, you seem pretty confident that it's 12 because it's going to be 6 groupings of the parents, and then the other grouping would be the reveal that we get with Jade and Tabby. Well, okay, so I guess Tabby says that they tried to save their kid from the ritual, or at least kind of implies something like that, which makes them different and being able to be reincarnated in their own immortality way versus the other 12 parents being reincarnated because they completed the ritual. That's what we're supposed to take from it, right? And the reason I'm asking that question is because I thought for a second that maybe like they didn't do enough to stop the ritual and their kid still died as the 7th kid, meaning that for every one of those monsters, there's also an offsetting reincarnated soul. Like there would be the monster versions plus the reincarnated parents. But I don't know if it's either or if it's like because they tried to stop their kid from being sacrificed, it sets them apart from the other versions of immortality. So that's where my mind's going and why I thought that this conversation was needed. I need you guys to tell me, am I reading too into it or what?
No, I don't think you're reading too into it. I think that if you look at the picture that I sent you that we talked about a couple podcasts ago, the cave painting, we see, like you said, Luke, the monsters around the 7 slabs, the sacrificial tributes of the kids. And we were wondering, who are these 2 that are in the top right corner? And then who are these 2 that are in white, not in red, with this little square thing on the other side of the red entity? And again, anyone who's listening, you'll have to look up the cave painting. But again, I went through this on the other podcast. It's the story that technically was kind of correct, pretty correct, about the monsters sacrificing the children or the people, the parents sacrificing the children and becoming the monsters. And we originally were like, who was the 2 people? Is one of them going to be the boy in white and an adult? Well, now we can look at it as a man and a woman, meaning Jade and Tabitha's original souls, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're the ones, in my opinion, that were there when the sacrifice was happening, but they were being either held back by the other humans, the other parents that weren't going to let them stop it, or they just knew that they couldn't do anything about it, so they just watched. And when they watched, they poured their hope, the story. They told the kids the story to try to make them feel better while it was all happening. My opinion is that it was Jade and Tabby's souls that were giving that story to the kids that allowed them to have the hope that was poured into the tree, into the roots that created the faraway tree. Now, the sad thing is, now that I'm looking at this cave painting, is this literally of, the two stick figures in white? One's bigger, one's smaller. If we can assume it's just saying that one's a man, one's a woman, and it's Jade and Tabby's souls, and it's just a little square, is that them mourning their dead child on the slab by themselves after the ritual has been completed? I mean, I took it as confirmation that their child was sacrificed 100%.
Yeah.
They
Okay.
couldn't stop it.
Agreed.
Their child was sacrificed. So we have to get into this. It's a little, is it weird that just Fatima magically knows this answer? But we do get revealed that the story is that I was telling is correct, except I didn't know what the goal was. I didn't know what the prize was, but they wanted immortality. They
Mhm.
sacrificed their children, and the immortality they achieved was cursed immortality as monsters, where yes, you're immortal. Obviously, Smiley is immortal and can come back to life, but you are a freaking monster. Yeah, there's so much to talk about.
So,
I don't even,
well, I guess the question becomes, what separates, just even if the ritual works successfully, is the only thing that separates the reincarnating souls of Jade and Tabby being that they tried? Like, is it
right.
simply
They
that? 'Cause
didn't do the
that
sacrifice.
I'm in for that. Yes, I think
Yeah.
that is a worthwhile distinction, that they weren't involved with the sacrifice. They were anti the sacrifice, but if their kids still curtains for him, and the cave painting has the dark entity whatever front and center, and like
Yep.
kind of the ritual white stick figures are to one side, and then the two that we're now assuming are Tabby and, oh my gosh, the names,
Jade.
Miranda and Christopher's original bodies are on the other side. So that's like, I don't know, I'm down for that distinction. That would make a whole lot of sense to me, and the
And I'm
numbers all
in-
work.
I'm in with all of that if hope is literally tangible. Like I brought that up in in a previous podcast off of the back of Jimmy's theory about hope being important. Like that's why they need to torture Borden the way they do. If hope is tangible, and I need that to be explicitly stated in a future season, then that's a good enough distinction between Jade and Tabby versus the rest. If it's not, there needs to be more to differentiate why that they're reincarnating versus being monsters. But that's it. It sounds like hope can be a thing though, that kind of plays in with the rules of everything that's been set up so far.
And it makes sense, right? If you're Tabby and Jade, Christopher and Miranda's original bodies, original souls, heartbroken that your child and 6 other children are going to be sacrificed, it makes sense, just like they said, that these two people, while these children are being sacrificed, would be saying what they can say to them to try to make them comforted and give them some kind of hope, and be like, we're here for you, whatever you need to say. Like, what would you say to a dying child, right? And if you can say, Luke, that hope could be tangible, I can buy the fact that if those two are the two that give the story to the children, that creates the hope, that then creates a magical tree, that then also allows these children to appear in Fromville to talk to the reincarnated souls. If all that is true, then I'm okay with it just also kind of brushing off onto Jade and Tabby's soul that, okay,
Mhm.
you are immortal, reincarnated. You're not obviously a human immortal, but you will be reincarnated until you can finally allow your children, your child, your daughter, and the other children to find peace.
Yep.
Because I feel like that's the end game, right? That's what we have
Mhm.
to do now. You have to allow the tortured souls of these children to finally have peace.
I'm good with all that.
I need to line up all 12 monsters and play matchmaker and be like, okay, these two were
Who's married to
these
who?
two were banging, these two were banging.
Yeah.
I
Well,
thought they were
did we see, wait, Luke,
standing.
did we see
What?
Jasmine? Was Jasmine in there?
Who's
I don't-
Jasmine?
Yeah,
Jasmine's
what?
the only named monster.
Oh, the one
She's
that
the
was
one that-
It's the
flirting?
one that's
Yeah, the
I
young
think
one,
so.
because she'll be
I
with the young guy. I would
I
assume.
thought it was guy, girl, guy, girl, guy, girl, but I could be wrong. So let's, because I was more focused on
We'll
the
have to
numbers than
revisit
I
that.
was
Yeah.
like the ordering of
Yeah.
like where they were standing. But it's
I was
yeah.
specifically looking for the young guy, so I didn't look for Jasmine. And again, this is a full-on instant reaction from me. I watched it right before because of the screener, so I didn't get a chance to plug that.
I could see the
Who's
milk.
Jasmine from
I could see
Aladdin,
the
Kathleen?
milkman with the nurse, and I feel confident that Sheriff
Who's with Granny?
Monster is with like 70s housewife monster.
Yeah, I could see that.
Okay.
I want to know who's with Granny.
Yeah,
House mother,
that's
and she has a child to sacrifice. She's too old to have.
Milkman's kind of old. He might be with Granny.
Yeah, he was a little bit older.
And there's a librarian lady that's kind of older.
it could be that like it could even be like a grandma and her son. Like it doesn't they don't necessarily
Yeah,
have
you
to
could
be
be a
like married or
grandchild that you're
whatever. Like you could be
sacrificing,
yeah, as
technically.
long as you're sacrificing one of your kin, it's all good.
And
But
here's the other thing. We've commented before on the monster's wardrobe. Are we to assume that was the wardrobe when this ritual went down?
No.
Or
Mm-mm.
do we think
No.
I agree, because that
Right.
would contradict that they're in boats in the cave drawing and a bunch of other things. So we are to assume that they just kind of keep their prizes and collect them
Yeah.
back in the caves and can change, except they
Remember-
haven't changed it all in.
They stole Miranda's scarf too, so they're capable of taking
Yeah.
clothing and like and placing it in certain spots, and they
Taking
have
it, but
habits.
they haven't shown an inclination to change their wardrobe.
Well,
Why does
Smiley's
Nurse
butt-ass
Monster
naked
want to
when
be
we saw
Nurse
him again.
Monster? I guess Randall did say they have their habits and stuff like that. So maybe she's just like, I'm playing nurse and I'm going to do it for the next decade. You better get
I'm
used
the
to it.
milkman, baby. Brian
Milkman
loves me
is
as the
the only
milkman.
one that's always going to be Milkman. Oh, if I see that guy, what if he becomes Fireman Monster?
Let's get him on the
I'm going to
pod.
quit the podcast.
Let's get him on the pod, dude.
I will say, I liked the way they combine these two gigantic reveals because you've got on one hand on this bucket, Fatima's saying straight up, like they sacrificed the kids, which means they can live forever. Like she told anyone who's
Just
a casual
told us.
watcher, told us, right? Meanwhile, you have Jade playing that gorgeous violin that's
Yeah.
bleeding over the whole thing, right? So they don't even need a score because that beautifully scores the whole thing. And then you see Jade and Tabby, and that I could assume could get a little confusing for people, but I think, it's nice. It's even nice for me to be talking to you guys fully because I got grasped most of that, but even some of the things you were saying, I'm like, huh. Right. Like until Luke literally said like there's 12 of them and each one of them would have had a kid and then Jade and Tabby will be the 13, 14 like
14, yeah.
Whoop, right over the head.
See, I only had the advantage of watching this twice and taking notes, and I watched it originally later or
today
like
too,
right
yeah.
after our last podcast. But yeah, so I mean, let's just continue talking about everything. Of course, we're not done yet, but because all of the reveals of the other Matthews bucket is kind of what we're talking about here, I just want to say a couple things and then we can get back to what we were saying, because the only thing that's worth pointing out, and Jimmy, I'll give it over to you about the shout out here, but the musical note reveal was awesome that we didn't technically talk about too much on the podcast. I think we saw it floating around in our Discord, but I truly did not believe that it was going to be that, but I also don't have a musical bone in my body, but I'll give you give the shout out there because it's so deserved.
All right, so we're giving this shout out on the Discord to Jay Ellis Music. They've nailed it. Unbelievable. Now, like Luke said, I have no musical bones in my body. I did comment back and say that was cool. Funnily enough, Jim said that, what was it, his mom was a pianist? Is that?
Piano teacher.
Right, piano teacher, which is hilarious because my wife is a piano teacher, and I could have asked her about this, and I did not, which of course, why would I? But that's the one contribution she could make to a show she definitely would never watch. But yes, he nailed it. He said that, should I read it? I mean, it's pretty damn good. And this is, I would say this is before leaks. I don't know, but he said, this might be dumb, and I maybe, this may be dumb, and I may be making a big stretch here. I was a music major in college. I was clearing out some old textbooks and found my Intro to Music Theory textbook. There is this thing called a rhythm music note tree. It's basically a breakdown of the value each note has. This has a point, I promise. There's another thing called the circle of fifths, which has all the notes of the scale 1 through 12. Can the numbers in the bottle on the tree be music notes? Don't
So
need to go
good.
any further, but wow, that was nailing it. And I know that there was some great conversation about it on the Discord, but a lot of people, again, weren't musically inclined, so didn't understand it as well. And I was fully one of them. And I didn't see that theory anywhere else. And I'm sure it was out there because no one can claim a theory, but props to Jay Ellis Music.
Yeah, absolutely.
Props.
And like, it was a really cool reveal because even Jade, who said he was trying dozens of eggs, like he was trying everything he could possibly think
Yeah.
of, and for it to be something that he was actually, good with, like he's been
Inclines to it,
shown
yeah.
exactly. So it was just a good reveal. And I guess the question comes down to the purpose of the music. Is that what allowed the summoning of the kids, or is that what was also needed for the birth and the rebirth of the monster to happen? And it was like, is that a cinematography
Mm,
parallel that we got there,
yeah,
or is that purposeful?
Well, both summoning the kids, but also I think that's what summoned the man in yellow, because he said that Jade sure can play it.
Yes, yes, you're
So
so
I-
right.
That's the two things. They
So-
can't just give these people a win of any sort without it having dire consequences. It's a shame.
I love that.
I'm excited to talk to you guys about this because my thoughts are that it was cinematography for Smiley being reborn and the music being played, right?
Mhm.
I think that their answer to it was that music is the universal language. So, meaning, who knows what the language was back when they were sacrificing 7 children? The children apparently said on Kui, and that means remember, which I guess we can get into that in a little bit. But you need to use something, which these children are pretty damn smart. You need to use something that's universal and can be figured out years and years and years and years and years ahead of time or over time. So that's the main reason. But I think the man in yellow just appeared because they had a big W. I don't think it was specifically the music. I just think it was because they got further into the quote unquote game. He was like, all right, you're going too far. Just like with the radio tower. I mean, we're to assume that was him
Yeah.
on the radio tower, right?
Oh yeah.
Or
Oh
speaking
yeah.
on the radio. So he can appear whenever he wants, I think. And I think we could talk about it. Is he the entity? Is he just another big bad? But let's talk about everything.
Cleared
see
the
Lions,
level.
I see.
Cleared the level. Time for a boss battle is what you're
Yeah,
saying.
baby.
No,
Yeah, baby.
I
Time
do
for a
think
big
that's
boss.
right. So indirectly, them figuring out the
Yes.
music brought him out of hiding.
Okay.
Roll up
And
the sleeves. Thanos, I'll do it myself.
I do want to give some flowers to Jim a couple times throughout this episode for little moments. Not a lot of
Me?
flowers, Kathleen. Not you. Not a lot of flowers, Kathleen. Just a little bit. He did have
You
more
can
of
give him
that.
flowers.
Well, because he's dead now, and you
Because he's
can't
dead.
speak ill of the
You
dead.
can't speak ill of the dead, exactly.
But the two things I want to say is he did continue on that path of apologizing and kind of having some perspective when he went and talked to Jade. But I love when he called out. I was thinking in my head and I was writing my notes. I'm sure you guys were too. I love when Jim calls out, like, we got to be careful here. Let's not just play it just because we figured this out and then think back to the music box, which that was where my head was going before you even said it. It's not the same song, is it? As what's the ballerina's doing? I don't know.
I'm not.
I don't
good
know.
enough
I
at
don't have
that,
a
but I
music
don't
here.
believe
Yeah,
so.
like I have
I
no
Yeah,
idea.
wouldn't say so, no. I don't think so, but
All I know was this song was beautiful. I remember that
Yeah.
song being kind of creepy. So I want to
Okay.
say no, it wasn't. But you'll hear us correct ourselves in 2 years if that's not true.
I
That's
mean,
very
what other
true.
reveals do we get here that you guys want to break down or just theorize besides the Julie stuff and the Jim stuff that happens at the very end?
So my question to you guys is, Kathleen, I agree with you. I think that from the writers wrote themselves into a corner in a way where they did have to figure out a way to explicitly just tell us the
yeah.
answer.
Mm-hmm.
Are you okay with the fact that Fatima has the smiley baby and then she just can magically understand and needs to now tell us that I was told that these people sacrificed their children and now they are cursed monsters. Is that okay with you guys? Do you think that's a little bit of a cop out?
She said, not I was told. I thought she said I saw the whole thing, like I saw
Either,
it.
yeah, right. Either way.
I am okay with Fatima now being intrinsically connected to these monsters in a way that we can't really explain because of this birthing process.
Okay.
And I wasn't even thinking that if she survived the whole birthing, that she would have something to hang her hat on for the experience. There would be some value in her going through that because she might have some information on the monsters. But I am fully okay with her having just a weird connection to them and kind of understanding them at a level. Or it was just those off-screen conversations between her and Kimono Lady that I love so much.
That's what I was going to bring up.
We confirmed that Elgin had those conversations, man. He had some great conversations with the angel. But Brian, honestly, I do think that that is good. Like I am fine with that. Like if she has the smiley baby, there's some kind of connection with the monsters now. She obviously has now been, I don't want to say taken over, but has some kind of intertwining with Fromville, with the entity.
Dude, I can't wait for next season when Smiley looks at Fatima and says, "Hey, mom," or something snarky. It's gonna be hot. It's gonna be hot.
That is awesome.
I have a larger kind of question, and feel free to answer it in a one-word sentence. Do you think that Ellis actually put a baby in her, which turned out to be Smiley, and the only reason she had Smiley is because she got pregnant and you can't really get pregnant in Fromville? Or do you think Fromville was just like eeny, meeny, miny, mo, pick a woman, you're having the baby, it's Smiley?
Option number 2, my lord. So that's right.
Number 2.
I love that. It has to be number 2 because
no
specifically stated that Fatima couldn't medically get pregnant in the past, like before Fromville. So that, and it was also the same episode that that the reveal happens is right after Smiley dies. So I think that's that.
But doesn't Ellis have the blood transfusion and then Banger? Doesn't that kind of seem like it could have been like okay?
We talked that out on the podcast before. I think Jimmy, you were saying either the pregnancy test was earlier or something.
Well, there's no, I think someone in our comments did call us out. I don't believe there was actually a pregnancy test result saying yes, you're pregnant, but it was just, hey, I guess Christy, not Mary, whatever. Hey, I think that we need to talk. I am missing my period. I am this, I am that. Okay, you might be pregnant.
But that happens
same night as the transfusion, I believe it is.
Yes, okay.
Meaning it would already have, yes. So, no, I believe that Fromville chose Fatima, and I think that when we talked it out a couple episodes ago, when we were wondering if she was going to become a monster or have a monster baby, I think that our thoughts were pretty on key, where it's just she was the light of the town. She was starting. She's just the one. She's the one because if you choose her, she's a great person to break.
Yeah.
Question number 2 before we move on from Fatima. Phantima, scary kimono lady, our angel. She's just a character, just a monster. Are you okay with a random ass monster?
No, and there's more to that story. Also, I think we have to abandon the nickname Phantima. Someone did not appreciate us calling her Phantima this late in the story, and actually her actress, I'll just say, looks nothing like Fatima's actress. So I think we can move on from that. Let's just call her Danny Phantom. No, we'll call her Kimono Lady. I think that's pretty accepted. But no, there's more to that. She is clearly a separate entity from the monsters, and there was a reason she was able to run the show. There's a reason the monsters didn't attack her, so she has a role to play.
I just think,
look at that yawn, Kathleen. There it is.
Man in Yellow and Kimono Girl are just the power couple of Fromville. They started this whole thing. They are definitely hooking up and banging. So that's just where I'm at right now.
The bang to the bang to the bangity bang.
And I love that this is so lost coded that they're doing the Man in Yellow until we get a name. Like that's what we're gonna have to call him, and the Boy in White, which I'm surprised he didn't show up. So I guess the biggest shock of this episode was the lack of Victor and the boy in white. But I
Yeah.
love the introduction of this new man in yellow guy because it just adds a whole nother layer and finally a face for us to hate. But I really do think Kimono Lady is like a 1B to his 1A.
Yes, and we talked about this, and I'm not going to try to pronounce it or bring it up too much again, but early when we first met Kimono Lady and we were talking about her, I brought up something that I saw on Reddit and Google about the Asian folklore of pretty much the monster that is, I believe the story is that she lost her baby and then she haunts because of that. But basically, I mean, it's an Asian folklore. It seems to kind of fit in a way. And we were saying it's probably not exact, but they might be getting inspiration from it. So it's funny. You're saying you think she's 1B. I don't know. I think she only has one purpose, and it's to bring back the monsters when they die, if they die.
That's a cool idea, though. I like that.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, after watching the episode, I was kicking myself so hard for not being like, that hatch in the room is 100% going down to the tunnels. That was a massive
We
clue
said
that
it.
whatever we were not dying on the hill of it. Where else would it
Well,
have
Luke told
lived?
me it would be boring as shit. Remember, I did say it.
that. Yeah. Yeah.
And
So
was
we
it, Luke?
joke.
No, it was not
Well,
boring.
No, they did it very, very well. I would agree.
So I did say, like, what if it's just the tunnels? And Luke was saying, well, then what's the point? I said, is it an escape hatch, etc., whatever. But we also joked that it's cabin in the woods and they were going to be in lab coats and experimenting down there when they opened the hatch. But either way, Desmond wasn't down there. Kind of hurt my feelings. Wasn't hitting the numbers correctly. The island didn't blow up. But yeah, definitely wasn't boring. Smiley's back, baby.
Okay, do we want to do this?
Yes.
Just take it to the last. Okay, so this last scene is the jaw dropping scene, right? If it wasn't Sarah ripping Elgin's eye out, it was this moment where not only do we have Jim have his final like goodbye to his wife, where obviously he doesn't know that, but he's trying to get some information out of her, but she has no idea that she's saying, I need some time, and she's never going to see her husband again. She leaves, and he has this moment where he runs into a Julie who clearly looks different. Shout out to Dark, Jimmy. That's the vibes I was getting here in this moment.
Yeah.
But holy hell, the acting from Julie here was so good because you could just tell how horrified she was, and she was so desperate to have some sort of impact in this, like, quote unquote, like story she's trying to change as she's story walking here, because she's clearly from the future. We don't know how far in the future, but she's trying to change the events, and it sounded like what she said was, today's the day it happens. Like, Dad, you have to get back. I think she was trying to specifically prevent her dad from being killed, which of course doesn't happen because Ethan confirms that you basically can't mess with time like that, even if you can be a part of it, like she was with the throwing of the rope. But this was a great scene. I didn't think they had the balls to do it, but man, when the man in yellow puts him up against the RV and just the brutal ripping of the neck, it looked good. I was so happy. I know, Kathleen, you're probably going to have a gripe because we are going to have those 1 or 2 episodes of the Matthews family being salty all for the first couple episodes. I think there's still a chance that our current version of Julie does gain the ability to manipulate events and actually saves Jim. So I'm not saying this is the last we'll see of Jim ever, but there is also a chance that it is the last that we're going to see of Jim. So it could go either way for me.
I will say that I assumed right then and there she did change something, almost as if the thing she was trying to avoid wasn't Jim dying. Like, she just said, this is when the things happen. I actually took it the opposite way. Like, there's someone else that was going to die that she wanted to have Jim help. That maybe her story walking stopped him from kind of. Seemed like the boy in yellow was there. The man in yellow was there anyway.
Boy in yellow.
But 2, can I just say that if Jim does disappear, that just opens up for a Tabby and Jade love affair, because obviously they've been like soulmates.
No, it's true.
Whatever
It's
you
true.
wanna call it back in the day. It opens up, like, killing off Jim opens up this, like, fate is just going to bring them back together as it always does. And remind me later to just talk about, man, it sucks to just be like, if Tabby and Jade are the ones that are always going to keep coming back to Fromville, and everyone else is just collateral damage. Anyone like that's like Jim just happened to like be in her dorm freshman year, and then all of a sudden they like he's in Fromville and gets his throat ripped out.
Yeah.
Stinks.
Brian?
there's gonna be a week of mourning where Tabby and Jade are gonna be like, "Oh, Jim, we were just starting to like that guy." I guess Tabby will be like, "I really was married to that guy," and then after a week, they're gonna be like, "Well, I mean, we did just remember we were married in like a bunch of past lives. What if we
Yep.
just eh, my
Got
kids
married
know
again.
you?" Yeah, they're totally
Why don't you
shacking
just
up.
move in? We'll see what happens. So it had to have been awkward for Jim when he's hearing anything that he's hearing, and it's tough. Tabby tried her best to do the "I don't want to talk about it" and walk away thing, but she let Jim know that, they had a child together and they were married, I guess, if that's how you want to say it. So Jim probably had a lot of crazy things going through his mind just with the whole, wow, okay, so are Tabby and Jade like a thing now here? Are they remembering that they love each other? Like, what's going
Mhm.
on, right? I don't know if they're going to actually go there and say, now we're in love and we're going to be together. I could definitely see that. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much all I have to say about just
Yeah.
that specific Jim and Tabby. But when it go ahead, yeah,
I was gonna say it's interesting that I don't think Miranda and Christopher got that far. I think Miranda got herself killed before they would have had that realization that they a million years ago sacrificed a kid. You know what I mean? Like they're
Definitely.
So
obviously we reference Miranda and Christopher, sorry, as their as our last their last soul or last person or whatever you want to
right,
say, their last physical body. But it goes on and on and on and on and on. So I don't. It seems like Jade and Tabby got way further than maybe Miranda and Christopher did, right? Or
oh
maybe
yeah,
I'm okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
I agree. It's the thread in the sweater kind of thing. Every single time they are reincarnated, it could be a totally different result. It could
Yeah.
literally be that Tabby's version of her soul 3 times ago died in the first 5 minutes of Fromville, or it could
Mhm.
be that they got far. But I feel like this is probably the furthest that this reincarnated couple soul has gotten. Christopher and Miranda definitely didn't seem, based on the little that we know, that they were any kind of really not a couple, but also it didn't seem like, well, I guess I can't say that they weren't like talking in a way to try to save the children, but it again had to be the boy in white that went to Christopher and said, "Hey man, go to the tree. You have to go through the tree and then you'll save the children." Miranda apparently didn't really know that. She knew that she was destined, or she thought she was destined for that. She had her visions, but I don't think that they were really on the same kind of track that Jade and Tabby were.
No, this is the farthest they've gotten for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when it comes to the man in yellow and Julie, I think I took it fully that Julie was trying to save her dad. She knew that this is the moment he
Mm,
dies, and she was trying
okay.
to stop it, and she was trying to
Oh.
story walk, and she said, I have to change the story.
Mhm.
And Kathleen, I'm surprised you didn't say this, and maybe I'm just wrong, but I thought that wig was awful for Julie with
Oh.
her short hair.
That's so funny you say that because me and Alex are watching Tell Me Lies, and in season one, I'm like, this character is wearing a wig, and Alex was like, I don't think she's wearing a wig, and then in season two, I'm like, it's a wig, and I googled it, and everyone's like, wig. I'm like, I am the wig master. I can always count. Alice in season 5 of The Magicians, never forget
That's
that
why I
one.
can't believe you didn't say it, because to me it was like so obvious, but maybe
It'll
to
be
Really,
you it
you
was
wear
natural.
almost so
wigs?
obvious.
That'll be her hair next
We're
season.
wigging out.
It'll be
Yeah,
like
we're
Yeah,
that.
wigging out, and they'll actually tell her to cut it.
yeah. They're
Yeah.
trying to make her look older, but really, they made her look like a character from what's that John Travolta movie that everyone loves? That's like it's kind of like a
Pulp
scary.
Fiction.
Yeah, Pulp Fiction, not scary. Yeah, it's a Pulp Fiction wig, basically.
Yeah.
Um, how about I was really shocked that the man in yellow was like, your wife really shouldn't have dug that hole, Jim. I was like, oh, we're going all the way back to the hole. I feel like she's done a lot of other stuff since then. I can't believe
Well,
he's like,
that's the first thing she did to get suspicious.
sure,
And
sure.
also, you could link it. Maybe I'm reaching here where when Julie does time travel for the first time, she hears that moment. So if Tabby didn't dig the hole, she wouldn't have heard that moment to know that it was in the past, and she would have just assumed that the Martin thing was in the present with weird stuff happening. So I don't know. There's a lot there, but I do like that he said it because it was a badass delivery, and
Yes, yes,
and
yes.
it makes more sense that he was the one on the radio talking to him rather than just spot picking one of the monsters to decide to do that every
Yeah,
once in a while. Like there is a big bad that we can all point to. And it's also just like a good time to introduce the face of Fromville And I could be wrong about that. Of course we could. Like, it still could be Kimono Lady. It could be something else entirely. It could just be like a supernatural presence. But it's cool that to introduce like a character at this level with this amount of power, because obviously he's super strong. Like, he's monster level if you can rip a throat out, and he can walk in the day. Like, that can't be
Yep.
left out because that's super important. Like, he's his own separate entity. So a lot of freaking fun to look forward to with him. And he's definitely just going to be the face of the entity, is my guess.
So, a couple things that I want to talk to you guys before we finish up here. We have Mr. Daywalker, Mr. Man in Yellow. We also have confirmation that this must not mean anything when it comes to the monsters during the day in the tunnels. They can just be in their human form. Remember, that was the question that I asked when she says to Victor, "If you keep coming back, we'll make you stay." I was like, "Well, why is one a monster and why does one look like a human? Can they control that?" It's kind of making me think that maybe they can daywalk too. I mean, it makes the Man in Yellow special, and we already brought up the fact is like, do the talismans even mean anything? I'm kind of going back and forth on that, but that's not the major thing that we need to talk about right now. First question for this before we end here. Okay, we kind of had to assume this, but does it bother you at all that Ankui is just a random word that's going to mean something that we were never, ever, ever going to guess? I mean, we assumed that, but do you
I'm fine with
care
it.
that it was just a made up word that had no way to be figured out?
It would have been cool if it was like a Hodor situation, but it also can't do that as well as Hodor did. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm fine.
What if it
Okay.
was a ritual in another language and it's like part of it somehow, and like the another language had it on Kui in it? Like it's like embedded in them because I'm just making this up, but like I'm just making like, why would them like looking them dead in the eye and being like on Kui? Like why
Doesn't it
would
mean
that
Because
it
they're
means
jump?
saying
remember?
remember.
They're saying remember
They're
it.
saying you need to remember.
That's what they said.
That's what it
That's
means.
what
It means
that's what
remember.
it's a direct translation. So they're saying to their parents, meaning Jade and Tabby, remember, remember, remember. You have to remember so you can help free our soul from the
Yeah.
curse of like Fromville,
They weren't
Yes.
saying the words remember, they're saying on Kui, right?
which means
That's what I'm
remember.
at. That's the point. That's another language for remember.
Well, and I'm saying, how would Tabby and Jade know that? And I'm saying, what if it?
Because well, when they did remember, she says Ankui means remember. So yeah, you're right. Like it wasn't going to be the
It's from
catalyst,
back.
but it's what the kids know. Because if they just started talking English, it wouldn't really make sense.
Sure.
That's why I'm asking if you're bothered by it, because it's literally a word that means nothing, that we were never going to figure out, and now we're just told, hey, it means they were telling them remember this entire time.
I think there's more to the
Brian?
story.
There could be for sure.
Yeah,
I think we're gonna
I'm
see
with
it.
Kathleen. I think them defining that that's what Ankui means, they then have to show us, okay, who were the original Miranda and Christopher? Because we're talking maybe hundreds of years back. Maybe it was just some like tribe of people who would just have a made up language.
Yeah.
But that
Mhm.
they
Right.
gotta flesh out that entire story to have it make sense that Ankui was just their way of saying remember.
And I think they
And
will.
that's why the kids are smart, and that's why they had, and the writers are smart, and they had to use the universal language of music, because you can't write numbers to be deciphered into English or something like that. It
Yeah.
had to be something that could be deciphered from hundreds and hundreds of years ago that's still a thing nowadays. The universal language of music. I guess it was a thing back then, or they figured it out in the meantime while their souls were trapped. Whatever. But last big thing here is now with Julie. Luke, this is some dark talk. Not necessarily dark talk like I'm spoiling anything, but it's time travel talk. And I hate kind of doing time travel talk because it's very tough. So when you're a story walker, you can't change things. You can only watch them as they happen. Okay? Luke, Tel Iran Riyadh, where, maybe Julie, and when I say Tel Iran Riyadh, for anyone listening, Wheel of Time talk, it's when you walk in dreams, right? Julie herself enters the dreams, or enters the past. Okay, we have now confirmed that she herself can enter the past. She said that to Ethan. This isn't a vision. This is me entering the past. I have my body still where it is, but I myself enter the past. Can she be killed in the past? But also, my main question to you, Luke, is she did change something because she threw the rope. You can't tell because then you're going into the whole time travel thing where, well, the rope was going to be changed or thrown anyway, but by who? Because
Yeah,
then
I
you could
mean,
just say you were going to save Jim anyway.
they can
It's
go any route they want here where they try and be as precise as Dark was. They can try and do the MCU thing where you can change the past, but it creates new futures without affecting your past, meaning that like storyline is that what has been helping Jade and Tabby's soul get farther and farther every time? Is this intervention of the story walker that's alive at the time? Like, is that somebody that gets
Ooh, I like
reincarnated?
that.
There's a ton of questions. And yeah, like they haven't given us nearly enough scenes of Julie messing with time for me to even begin to guess, because you're right, like
Yeah.
the rope thing kind of breaks the whole thing, and her talking to Martin. It's not like she's just there, like she has dialogue when she's story
she's
walking.
done
So
things
yeah,
already that
she's
affects
touching her
time.
dad. Like, yeah, it's gonna get complicated
I
what you can do.
To play devil's advocate, the rope thing happened in the runes, which are allowing her to do this. So I don't have a concrete explanation, but they could just say, oh, it's in the runes. She's even more powerful story walking there. And that could just be an exception to everything.
But what about
I
her
don't
I knew
know,
interacting with
man.
Jim in near the RV where he dies? Like, is that
Well, she didn't
another
change anything there. What I was focused on in that interaction was the fact that the man in yellow had no interest in killing
Hurting Julie.
Julie, even
Yeah.
though he definitely knows who she is.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
I just would say I know Ethan is our lore master, but that doesn't mean what he says is Bible, right? He says, okay, story
can't
walkers
be
can't
because
change anything, but
Right.
how do you know?
Yeah.
We're in Fromville. I mean, could
Well,
be unreliable.
that's the tragic thing about this story because Ethan's the lore master, but then his lore was kind of broken already within the first time we saw her time travel. But then it's heartbreaking because she's saying and screaming, I have to change the story. I have to change the story because she knows her dad is about to die, but she doesn't change the story. So, yes, they're going to have to give us a lot more answers. Now,
Mhm.
do you think that the Dungeon Trio are all going to be story walkers, or is it only Julie and it just so happens that they were also a part of the same storyline as the Dungeon Trio?
I would guess she's the only one, but I don't have any good
Okay.
reason
And
for guessing that.
right.
Yeah.
Question 2, is Martin a story walker?
And he chained himself up so he would stop changing things. It's his
Well,
only way to stop
well,
changing things.
it also could imply like the story walking only reserved for past events. Like, can you not go to the future too? Like, that could also be a possibility. And in that case,
and do you
Martin,
have to be alive? Is Martin alive somewhere?
right? Or was he that dead body in the cellar room, in the Fatima room? Who knows?
True. And is Martin like Doctor Strange, where he can see, meaning like he has maybe as a story walker, you could see alternate timelines and different possibilities, and he himself is someone who maybe Julie can become this, but someone that understands how the story needs to go, so he will progress it in the way he needs to progress it, meaning he knew he had to be there chained up. He knew he had to have Julie throw the rope. He knows he had to give his blood to Boyd. He knows that now he, in this storyline, is dead and he disappeared. Or is disappearing mean, just like Julie disappeared, now he's
Hmm.
done story walking and he's back in his physical body?
If he is a story walker like Julie, I prefer the theory that he is Randall. Like, I don't want the story walker and the dungeon trio, whatever afflicted them. I don't want that to be two separate things that happen to Julie. It's either all three of them can
Right.
story walk, or it's and like nobody else can, or it's just her because she's special, and then like the whatever's afflicting them is just like PTSD stuff. I don't want it to be like there could be all these story walking characters. That just feels too chaotic, and
Yeah.
it feels like they have a ideally like a specific plan for what they want to do with her, and it's always got to be, you got to be careful. You need to know the end game if you're going to do anything with time touching and time loops
You really,
and
really
affecting
do.
the past. So it is the scariest thing they've done because it raised the stakes, but also, like, like Dark's my favorite show of all time. If you pull it off the right way, it's only going to throw this show into like the top tier if they can do
Yeah.
it in a satisfying and realistic way that doesn't break everything we've seen for 3 seasons.
Agreed.
I will say that this finale felt top tier to me. Like I felt like this can catapult them into top tier if they continue on this trajectory, giving us answers and maybe be all rise from here. I don't think the last 5 episodes coming in were needed. I think they could have been a couple, but I do think that the stakes that they brought into this finale could catapult into some big stuff for season 4.
Yeah, and let's be clear about this. Like the first half of the season was so good, and then it just started going so downhill because of the repetition, the frustration. They weren't in touch with the audience. They were making frustrating character decisions. But we did land this ship. I won't say perfectly, but it was as good as it's been for half a season, and that's a big deal. And I agree. I think the fandom's going to respect this episode. I think it's going to spawn like the most interesting conversations that the Reddit's ever had, that our Discord's ever had. It's going to be really fun to see how people react to it. So I'm not saying this was a perfect 10 out of 10 season. Of course not. And this wasn't even a perfect
agreed.
10 out of 10 episode, but the pathway forward is up for sure. Like I feel a lot better than I did 2 weeks ago.
Look at that face on Brian, dude. He's been shaking his head no at me for the past 5 minutes, dude. Let it rip, brother.
Nothing I contradict with. More so, like, here's the thing. Did we even get any earth-shattering revelations about the mystery of Fromville? Because we've been, maybe it's because we do the podcast. Well, what?
It was the
Well,
origin
Brian,
story of the immortality of the monsters.
Helps them solve the mystery.
Yeah, I think everything to do with the reincarnation of Jade and Tabby's spirit and the origin of the monster creation and the immortality of is that alone was like endgame stuff.
Yeah.
But that's it.
So,
I mean, I'm
Brian,
not saying you're wrong. Like that's it.
I'm glad you're
They're
bringing
no
this up
closer
because
to
that was
solving this other than we knew Tabby had something to do with Miranda. The Jade and Christopher, like we knew he had something going on. I guess we didn't directly connect those dots, but it's like, okay, now it's confirmed that you were Miranda in a past life. Again, what do you do? Go. How are you going to solve this thing? How are you getting everybody home? How are you going to defeat the monsters? Now there's a man in yellow who literally just makes me think of Curious George.
So this was going to be my parting shot, and I'm glad you brought it up. The revelations weren't endgame revelations because there's certain things that really have not been touched at all. We know that there's now monsters that were created by an entity. We have no idea what created that entity, what that entity actually is, what the end game for that entity is, what the motivations of that entity is. Like we have our theories for it. Now we have an introduction of a man in yellow that could be the entity, and then we'll start getting answers there. We don't know one little teeny bit of anything about the boy in white again, right? A lot of people may say, is that the child that Jade and Tabby's reincarnated souls tried to save? Is that there's a lot of people saying a lot of things about the boy in white, and the reason they're doing that is because we have nothing about the boy in white. Now we got answers, we got some revelations, but there is majorly endgame stuff that is still on the board, and it could make sense, and it's fine. If there's still 2 more seasons, we're only a little bit past halfway. Still a lot that needs to be considered. And is the end game saving the children's souls from the entity? But we know that this entity created these monsters, and it still leaves every single theory open, as in, like, are they fairies? They could be fairies because fairies in folklore started as humans. Can this entity be somebody who created dark fairies? I don't know that we're ever going to get any kind of answer like that, but we need to find out more about this big dog entity, and we will. I mean, there's still 2 more seasons, hopefully. At least there's 1 more season. I think the revelations were started, but I do feel like there are going to be some people that are going to say it wasn't enough, but I thought it was. I thought it got me. Like, it got me going for season 4.
Are we ready for parting shots here?
Yeah.
We are. Take us home.
Number 1, for the amount of marketing for this season that they focused on the wood totems by the log cabins, that was a nothing burger as far as season 3. That entire setting was a nothing burger. And I think they set it up because someone explicitly said, whoa, those knocks weren't like the monsters in town. So I think it's coming back, but that was nothing based on how hard they went in the marketing. And number 2, Jimmy, you said they set it up for this to be catapulted into top tier shows. I gotta see it first. Honestly, you can't have a top tier show where let's be honest, 6 of the 10 episodes were snooze fest. And that's what we had this middle of the season. They have not figured out the pacing. Kathleen, I love what you said, where I don't think they know really what they've been inconsistent with the characters or the character building. Enough of that. There are so many mysteries going around that you can have 10 satisfying episodes. Like, you can do it, just do it. So for the next 2 seasons, I need 10 episodes, if we want to consider this top tier, where all 10 episodes are like an 8 out of 10 and the finale is like this. This was a good finale for like an upper echelon show. But let's be honest with what the middle of this season was. It was not great television. It was all right, let's go through the motions here. Let's do the thing. So I need to see better from this show. Got me all riled up, man, because the potential's there.
Yeah, you're riled, bro. And I mean, I'm not against you, but I definitely wouldn't say they were snooze fest. But I would say that I don't know if I would say 6 either. I would say maybe 4. We're getting to the point where it could have been 2 episodes or something. But I don't know about snooze fest, but I understand what you're saying. I do, because we did honestly critique this show, and that's basically what we were saying. We were saying that a couple episodes could have been condensed into 1 or 2 and get us to where we need to go. Luke, parting shots.
Go ahead, Luke.
Yeah, I mean, I said my piece for the most part when I last spoke. I'm just really excited because the pieces are there. It feels like the chessboard has finally been set, and that is like where all the complaints come from. That why did it take so long to get to this point? Because this could have been the end of season 2, and if you compact season 2 and 3 into one, it would have been one of the best seasons ever, and we could have just the pace would have been so good. I see all the complaints, and I agree with a lot of them. But I am looking up. Like, I'm trying to be optimistic. I'm usually not the most optimistic either. So that's a little bit of a surprise. But Jimmy, you said it before, like the theories are what made this show super fun to podcast about. And I don't think that's going to go away. Even if next season isn't the best thing of all time, it's still going to be fun to talk about like how we're going to get to this end game. Cause I'm sure we're going to get the origin story explanation. We're going to start talking about the specific power that Julie has in changing time and all that. And I really do hope that we like kind of just crack down on some rules. I know Ethan keeps throwing rules out there that keep getting broken, but let's figure out like the finer details. And I think we're getting there, but I'm just praying that the writers really do know the end game and that this isn't just on the fly. They're like wiggling with things. Like if they know where they're going, we might look back and say, okay, all of the patterns were there for us to basically have this be a satisfying ending. But as far as it goes for just the season, this was fun. I'm happy we did this. And you're right. It's time for a break from, but it was a good ride, and we'll see you guys in 2 years. That's all I got.
Yeah, I can go off the back of that because mine's not really going to be about From. It's going to be more adjacent to like the community that From built on Discord. What a blast. And also so many messages. I'm so glad, like, 1, we have you guys, and 2, you guys have each other. Feels really fun and cool. Looks like some friendships are budding, but I would say don't let that stop. We've got right now Dune Prophecy, Arcane, and Silo, which are 3 banger shows. I don't watch Dune Prophecy because I've never seen the movies, but the boys love it. And then coming up, we have Dexter Original Sin, Severance, The Traitors, and Yellow Jackets, like all in the next 2 months, which is out of control. So if any of those are something you want to get into, like, let's be active on the Discord and let's keep having fun, because what a blast. Love you guys.
Kathleen, you nailed it. That was it. That was my parting shots, guys. We had a blast with all of you, whether it was talking on the Discord, talking on TikTok, talking on via email. We got some emails. We love it. That's the best part of this. So bingetowntv.com/Discord if you want to jump on our Discord. Like Kathleen said, the From Talk won't stop, because guess what? Everything we just talked about for 2 hours is going to be fleshed out on the Discord for another year. 2 years. Hopefully we'll be back in less than 2 years, because they said 2026 and we're almost already at 2025. So we'll see. They did kind of, I think it was like a year and some change between each season, but you guys can correct me if I'm wrong. But again, if you like what you heard, check us out at bingetowntv.com, especially now, because if you're listening on that From feed, we'll be inactive for a little bit. This is just our From feed if you're listening on the From podcast feed. So jump over to our Bingetown TV feed, and that's where you'll see all of our podcast coverage for the past 4 and change years. We've covered so many different shows. I'm pretty sure we're past the 100 burger now for TV shows. We're almost hitting, I mean, we definitely hit 1 million views or listens, but we can't really celebrate it because we've had so many different feeds and stuff that it's hard to count them all together. But we know we're past 1 million now, and we appreciate every single one of you guys. Like Kathleen said, Dune Prophecy, Arcane, Dex Original Sin, Severance, it's all coming soon. So jump on the bandwagon with us, BingetownTV.com. Once again, we are Bingetown TV. And thank you so much for uncooing with us, mother truckers.